So I'm out here in my Zone 7 Tennessee garden in the middle of January by my apple trees. And this particular one is a Gala apple. I have a Winesap apple as well as a Liberty apple too. But what I want to do is start a bit of an experiment. I want to see if I can get these apple trees to grow on their own roots. Now, I've done some research on it, and typically these, for hardwood cuttings, are going to get at most maybe a 40% rooting rate. So they're kind of what you'd rate on a more difficult scale of things. I've never tried apples and getting them to root before, so this will be something new for us. And we'll start here with this Gala apple tree, and then I'll work over to the Stayman Winesap apple. The Liberty apple doesn't have enough branching yet to really take cuttings from. It's a bit of a smaller tree. All these were planted last year. So we're going to go through that process. You'll get to see what I do on them, and then hopefully in about 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 12 weeks, we'll have some roots on something, and I'll share those results with you at that point. But I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, and let's go ahead and see what we can do with these apple trees. Now, before I start taking a bunch of cuttings off of this, one thing that you need to understand is that most apple trees that you purchase are going to be grafted trees. That means a scion or a branch has been taken from another plant and put onto a different type of rootstock. And that creates a plant that's either more disease resistant or it can limit their size. Like these are semi-dwarf trees that I have here. But when I take the cutting off of these plants, these apple trees, that cutting is no longer going to be on that rooting stock, and so it can grow to its full size. So if you have a small garden, you're going to prefer to have something more of a grafted, a dwarf variety of it rather than on this. So this method probably isn't the best method to do if you are just needing a small tree. So because it's January and this is a branch here that I actually don't really want to continue growing, you see how very low to the ground this particular branch is. It's probably maybe a foot from the ground. I'm going to go ahead and snip this one off as close as I can to the trunk without getting into that little collar area on it. So I'm just going to give it a little snip right here. We'll cut that off. All right, so this particular branch has two little sprigs coming off of it. And we're going to look on here, there's some nodes on here. And this is all first year growth up here at the top. If I come further down on this branch, I come to this point right there, and I can see that that's where a little bit of a color change happens, and that leads me to believe that this is older growth, and then up here is the newer growth. And I'm going to want to take from that newer growth. The current year growth, or the last 12 months or so, is where you're going to want that from. And I really just want something that's about 6 inches or so long. You can see here within that 6 inches, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the tip node on that cutting right here. So I'm going to take at the bottom of this one right below this node and snip it right there. And that's what I've got for one of my first cuttings on the Gala apple. And I'll do the same over here. I'll come beneath this node there. That looks like a nice healthy node. And the rest of that, I just am not even going to use because most of that cutting is old. So we're just using these little stem tip cuttings. And this one here, you can see it's got something that got broken off of it at one point. I'm going to clean that up a little bit above the node, just give it a little slant cut there. And I'll do the same at the tip of this other one. You have an apical bud up here at the very top that once you cut that off, it sends a signal down for those cells to come down into the rest of the plant and send off like roots or leaves, whatever it needs at that point in time. So by cutting those off, I actually help to send a little signal into the other parts of the cutting that it's time to grow something. And what we want it to grow, of course, is roots. All right, now this cutting right here, or this branch, is going inward into the plant canopy. I really don't want that to cross over and then kind of cross branches. So we're going to snip that one off completely too. And then we'll take a cutting from the current year growth up here at the top. I'm going to snip off, it's got a little bit of a leaf here. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but we're going to cut that little part off, and that'll be our third cutting right there. So I was able to get 2 more cuttings. They came from the tips of some other branches on this tree. You can see right there, I'm being very consistent with the size of cutting. They're about 7 inches, maybe 8 inches long total. You know, I would pick something anywhere between 4 and 8 inches is probably what you're looking for. But we'll see, you know, because I don't really know. I've never done this before. But these are all from the Gala tree cutting right now. So I always like to use a little water jar to keep them in while I'm walking around and taking cuttings. You can see right there we've got all those in here. That helps keep the cuttings hydrated, as well as when you go and put rooting hormone on them, it helps the rooting hormone to stick to the base of the plant, or the base of the stem. Now here is the Stayman Winesap apple. There's a couple branches here like this one that I do want to take off, but it looks like a good one that would be a subject for a cutting. Some of these up here at the top are not quite things I want to mess with, just because I want to give it some more time to kind of grow out. So, but anything here and down, which I do have several opportunities for cuttings on the base of this, so I can kind of keep the lower level of the limbs up to maybe around there or up here to this little branching spot right in that location there. So I'm going to go on and cut a few of these off so we can take a look at them. All right, so here is what we've got. This is that first one I took off. And this one looks like it's all first year growth. You can see you got some nice green right there at the base of that cutting. Hopefully the camera focuses well on it. But I will take 2 cuttings off of this one and see how they do. This one's a little thicker than I want right at the base, so I'll cut it right below here. You probably want about a pencil thickness, maybe slightly smaller than that. And then these other 2 are just about right, so I'll go ahead and use them. This one I cut right at the base of a node right here. And this one I may need to trim up just a little bit. But let me go ahead and do my cut on this one, and I'll probably pick right here to actually do that cutting. Let's go on and take that. There we go, and I'll snip this one down just a little. A slight slant cut, so any moisture that collects on the top of that can slide right off. And then I'll cut this right where that node is. I think I'll try to leave some of that in place. There we go. So that one's kind of a smaller one, but it's a little thicker, so it may have plenty of energy for what we want to do. And we got 4 of the Winesap apples right here, and we'll see how they do. And as a bonus for this video, I'm going to take some pear cuttings too, and we'll throw them in with the experiment with the apples. This is a Keiffer pear tree, and pears usually come off, they've got these flowers that come off of little spurs, and I really don't have a whole lot of that going on right now. So I'm going to take a few cuttings off of these areas of newer growth. I've got 3 branches that all seem to want to go straight up. I really only want 1, so I'm going to probably take a little bit off of each of these side pieces right here, and then maybe a little bit off of one of these 2 here. And we'll leave that central leader alone so it can just grow on up and grow nice and tall. But we'll go on and take a few cuttings of the pear tree. Pears tend to have an easier rate of rooting. I've never actually done a pear tree either, but that's why this is an experiment. That one's a little bit longer. And then sometimes I look for how close the nodes are to each other. So closer nodes tend to mean you've got more rooting hormones or more growth hormones inside the plant in those areas. The more far apart they're spaced, the less you've got there, obviously. So let's clip this little part here at the top. It's not as nice looking as the rest of it. And we'll take about 3 of these pear tree cuttings and see what they do. It's a small experiment. I don't have a huge amount of material here to pick from, but we could get a really good rate out of the pear trees. So my rooting medium for this, the soil that I'm using, is a mixture of sand and coir. I like that because it's well drained and will hold moisture. So you get kind of that combination that's ideal for cuttings. And you don't have to be precise. It's 50-50 here, but if you went 60-40, it probably would be just fine. Now, you can see here I've got my cuttings in my little jar. 4 of them were from the Winesap and the others were from the Gala. And I've got them pointing in different directions just so I'll know which is which. I'm going to use these little pots right here for the cuttings, and I haven't put my pear tree cuttings into the water yet, which I should probably go ahead and do once I've got that in there. Now I've got 4 pots here because I was originally anticipating being able to take cuttings of the Liberty, but it's just not ready to take cuttings from yet. All right, first things first, you're probably going to want to label your pot, so I've just got little plant labels made up. I'm going to use the round one for the pear cuttings because it's different from the other two. And then I'll stick one in here for the Gala apple and the other for the Stayman Winesap apple. So there's Gala, and then there's the Winesap apple. All right, so I am starting with the Stayman Winesap apple. I've already got one in here. Let me show you just what I did with it. Okay, I'm coming to the bottom. I see a node right here and a node right there. And what I'm going to do is wound this cutting a little bit. This is what you call it when you kind of scrape away a little bit of that cambium layer and create a little spot where there's this damage to the cutting. This will eventually heal over, and that healing spot will create cells that eventually will turn into roots. So I'm going to do a little bit of that on the other side as well. Probably no more than a 1/2 inch slot, roughly, give or take slightly. And then I'm going to take this cutting and I'm going to get it in my rooting hormone. I'm going to stick and make a couple of holes over here for those cuttings to go in. Knock off any excess from it. Always be careful not to get it on yourself. If you do, wash up good. And then I'm going to slide that in there and firm up the soil around the cutting. So if you've watched that other video about the 10 tips, you can see I'm doing exactly what I did in that one there with the hardwood cuttings. I'm doing the same technique because that is what you do. And here we go. So there's 3. And here's my 4th. And I'm going to do exactly the same technique for the other apples and the pears. So now that you've seen what I did for one, you pretty much know what I'm going to do for the rest of them. Now once you've already got your cuttings, you want to give them a little bit of water. That will help some of that soil settle in. You really don't want to have little air pockets around those cuttings. You want to have them nice and snug up against the soil medium for best rooting. And so the last step for these cuttings is to put them in a protected location. What I mean by that is just basically somewhere that is out of the direct sunshine, because the sun will eventually dry out your containers, and if you have a container dry out, that is what really causes the death of a lot of different cuttings. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of moisture. And keep in mind, we're in wintertime, and you always feel like things don't dry out as fast in the winter. And a lot of times that's true, but you can get dry spells in the winter, so you need to check your cuttings and make sure they are not drying out. One thing with this tray here, it does collect water and hold some moisture, so I will at least know if I've got enough water in here to allow that water to wick up through these pots and give the cuttings plenty of moisture. If you're in a colder zone, say like zone 5 or something, you may want to consider adding some extra protection over your cuttings, something like a row cover cloth or even a cloche. You can just cut off the bottom of a plastic container, and some of those will fit right over these kinds of pots just perfect. So just a couple of side tips for you that might be helpful. So how are we going to know that we're successful with these cuttings? Well, we're going to check out the roots. And we'll be able to see those roots come out of the little holes in the bottom. And once we see that, we'll know that we can go ahead and transplant them into another container. You don't want to go through and keep pulling these out. You can test for resistance a little bit, but you want to be careful with that, because if they're very fragile little roots coming off of it, you could accidentally break those off, and we don't want to do that. So just wait, be patient, and wait for the roots to come through the bottom of those containers. If at some point your cutting just turns black or really dark brown and kind of shriveled up, go ahead and pull it out and get rid of it. It's probably not going to make it. So that's what we've got, and hopefully around springtime we'll get to see some really cool roots happen from these apples and the pear trees. And stay tuned to see more with that. Hit the like button and subscribe. I really appreciate you watching this little experiment. And I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. We'll catch you next time.